Yeah, it was a weekend where referees took it both barrels from various camps.
I love the I'm good friends with referees line, and I've been key to the development of referees. Whatever you think about Carlo and Stephen Poacher, there's no question that he is box office when you put a microphone in front of him. I haven't seen the incident. There seem to be...
They should, if the video got leaked, they should... He said, I wish everybody could see it to make their own minds up. Instead, put it out there. Publish it.
Yeah, definitely. He obviously was all done for an altercation with a referee or for some sort of physical contact with the referee. So it is ironic that it is Carlo that suffered that after the Diarmuid Connolly situation 2 years ago.
Everybody's complaining about the referees, right? Davey is complaining about... Micheál Donoghue's complaining about... Poacher's complaining about it. We had a great piece on the website on offtheball.com written by Jake O'Donnell about violence against referees in grassroots football. And so this is exclusively a story about soccer, but there is no respect for referees in Irish sports culture, and it goes across almost all codes. And you can't have the most senior and most high-profile managers in any sport giving out about referees and think that referees are going to be safe, because they're not, because monkey see, monkey do, people copy.
That's the point, Ger. It's when you go to rural GA games, and to be fair, the GA is probably the worst for it, and I mean that as a GA fan. I grew up in a culture in Tipperary, playing GA, going to matches, and those kind of actions on the sideline, it gives, like, I agree with Davies. I love his passion, and I love the fact that he cares so much, and he defends his players, and he always gives them credit after the game and says how proud he is, and I genuinely think he is.
Yeah.
It's just you've got to try and keep that bit of composure there on the sideline. And I said it on breakfast radio this morning about, is it time for a case of these inter-county games, these big games, that managers understand? They have the technology to chat to people, their water carriers and guys bringing on messages, and I possibly think it is, because
I think they might scale back the operation soon. I think that's inevitable, especially after the
Davey spoke last year about, and I like him, and as I said, I love that passion. And he spoke last year about, spending the first half in the stand and second half down by the pitch. And why does he come down the second half? It's because to have a presence. And when I played rugby, it was always about body language, presence. It does have a factor. It does make a point. It's like someone doing a motivational speech. They say actions and presence and body language is 9/10 of the presentation, if you like. So it's just, but I can understand their frustration, because there's a standard, not alone in these matches, but in club matches, of missing out and stuff, umpires not picking, and the umpires are the ones that can probably watch that stuff. The referees, it's very hard for a referee to track it, and sometimes
it gets worse in club games, because you've got less talented linesmen and less qualified, if that's the right word, umpires.
But there's a lot of this blocking going on and obstruction when people, because there's a lot of movement in the game now, and that's what's actually happening a lot. People who are tracking people across, they're getting blocked out.
But it has an impact. My point here is that you can't take their actions where everybody's constantly complaining about the refereeing and saying, am I not allowed to even go and shake hands? Well, you're totally allowed to go and shake hands, but the problem is that at local sport, in football and in GAA, there are too many instances in the last 18 months of referees being physically attacked and verbally abused.
The abuse to referees getting soccer. My young fella plays under 11 soccer, and it's just, wow, it's mind-blowing stuff, and it's a cultural thing. It needs to change, because we can all shout at the referee when he makes a mistake and he does something wrong. If you think he's deliberately kind of making bad decisions and there's a trend throughout the game, it does infuriate you.
Yeah.
And as a dad watching, sometimes I have to kind of head away and stay away from the sideline. So I can understand that your son is playing and you feel he's been hard done by, and he's made all this effort and sacrifice. You're the one he's going to sit in the car with you going away, and he's going to be heartbroken because of some terrible decisions or hometown decision or whatever. It's difficult, but the referees need to be protected, and there needs to be a consistency around that in all sport in Ireland, I think, because, if you don't have the referee, and I tormented referees throughout my rugby career. If you don't have the referee, you don't have the game.
Yeah, no, for sure. Alan, welcome. How are you?
Good, Ger.
We didn't actually get to say hello to you there, but yeah, welcome. We should talk about the end of the season. Before we talk about the victory for Leinster, I think really what's happened here, and the big story, is that Sean O'Brien's Leinster and Ireland career has come to a pretty terrible end for him and for Ireland, because there was a sense that if we were going to have a breakthrough and reach a World Cup semi-final, that everybody needed to be at their very best, that we needed Sean O'Brien to be at the level that he was at in the Lions tour, and that the whole Lions tour actually was this brilliant example of him coming back from injury and reaching world level in a very short space of time. And we kind of hoped that he was somehow going to be able to replicate that, but the hip injury is obviously serious enough to warrant surgery, and he's out of the World Cup.
Yeah, it's so disappointing, and it's a very sad end for someone who's had just such a phenomenal career. And you talk about the passion and the drive and the determination that you want in a sports person. He had it. He was this modern day back row. When I played with Munster in Ireland, these kind of freakish back rows who had this power. Wally was one, David Wallace. He had this just incredible power. Along comes Sean O'Brien, along comes Stephen Ferris, along comes Dennis Leamy. This different type of player, this different type of back row. And there's so many of them now. Levy, Van der Fleer, Stander, this explosiveness. Sean had that explosiveness. He had an ability to beat people with just a little bit of evasion and then just acceleration through that space. And then you scrag him with a tackle, and it's just, if you're not on the money with Sean O'Brien, he's going to blow through you. And I played for probably 2 seasons against him. Played a couple of times in those Leinster games. I think the one in 2010 in the old Lansdowne, it was changed over to the Aviva, and Leinster beat us. And I remember just thinking, wow, the acceleration of this guy, but the hands as well. He gave a lovely little deft pass for Dricko to score in the corner. But he was tough as well and abrasive. And every time I met him in the last couple of seasons, and I think I seem to have said either best of luck or good luck in the recovery. It was a lot of that. There wasn't much well done, brilliant game, brilliant stuff, because it was usually he was out injured and he was just tormented, and it's just,
you mentioned Ferris.
sad.
Ferris, Leamy and him, they came along around the same time.
Yeah.
Their careers all cut short by injury.
Yeah, and I think the victims of their own power. I always thought, Fez was just an incredibly powerful and explosive player. And I just wondered, did that explosiveness and that power come against him? Dennis Leamy had to get a hip replacement. Dennis probably wasn't as quick as the other two, but he was unbelievably powerful. Dennis is a hip replacement. Stephen Ferris is a wonky ankle, sore hips, sore knees. And now Sean, he's just a list of shoulder, neck, elbow, hip.
It's some 6, 7, 8.
Hamstring, yeah, phenomenal.
Is the hip thing all down to the style of play, or is it down to?
I don't know. Look, I think it could be the power they have. The power they're generating with the acceleration and the way they can get off the mark. Sometimes I looked at some of my injuries, well, the shoulder and my knee. I had shoulder at the World Cup in 2003. That's just one of those things. You fall awkwardly. I fell like that, shoulder pops out. My knee in 2005 was, Mark Taylor was tackling me against Sale. He grabbed me by the collar, threw all his weight across my legs, and my knee just snaps inwards. I did my elbow in 2010 in Galway, trying to poach a ball. Someone falls in my hand. They're kind of unfortunate ones, and a lot of the boys have had them. Just look at Cian Healy, the amount of the injury profile he had for probably 2 or 3 years, and look at him now. He's just at this lovely, incredible run, which is phenomenal, and his performance at the weekend and his consistency all season is amazing. Sean never got that run when he came back, which was just so unfortunate. Whether he recovered fully and something else went wrong between hamstrings and knees, and it's just a shame, really. But going back to your question, maybe it is something to do with the power, the explosive power that they have, that maybe they've had that. I thought that, when Sean O'Brien and Cian Healy were kind of getting injured a lot a couple of years ago, I thought maybe it's because they're so powerful. Like Cian Healy has incredible power, and he popped his hamstring dead or squatting or something in the gym.
Came off the bone, I think.
It was. It was very difficult. So it's some of the injuries are just.
Can I just
twisting, turning nature of it, and some of them I think maybe is down to that power that they would have had.
This isn't wise after the event, because I literally made this point about 4 or 5 years ago that we should have given Sean O'Brien a year off in the World Cup cycle. That somebody like Sean O'Brien, there's a few key players. I probably would have given Murray a year off. I probably would have given Sexton a year off in the middle of the World Cup cycle and said, off you go, lie on a beach, go and work on the farm, do whatever it is you want to do, but stay away from rugby for a year. We'll pay you and we'll want you fully fit for the World Cup. And everybody was like, and then eventually it kind of became a thing, well, maybe we should do this, because obviously that's what the All Blacks did with Carter and McCall. 6 months.
We've tried it with tours, you know what I mean, to leave some guys out of some of the tours.
That's not enough. I think you need to go away, not be in training, don't be lifting weights.
The thing about that, Jared, they probably don't play the same number of games as maybe some of the English guys or the French guys. And you go to a player and say, here, take a year out, and he goes,
here's the money.
Yeah. And that's all
Give me
great.
the money.
Yeah, but come here. And then suddenly a Dan Levy and a Josh van der Fleer appear, and you're now third choice, you know. So
yeah, but you're that level that you're not.
I agree.
You're not doing it for everybody, right? You're doing it for people. When he's 33, we should be looking at giving James Ryan a year off at that stage, because he'll have played 15 successive years of world-class rugby.
It'll never happen
what I mean?
here. I think it'll happen that they play less games and they play less of the Pro 14 if they're on the Irish team, you know what I mean, if someone is like that. But it's just very unfortunate, because
it would have been worth the experiment in Sean O'Brien's case. It definitely would have been worth the experiment. And if he comes back and gets injured and he's out,
but he did have long periods, Ger, of rehab.
Yeah,
and I
they're not the same, I think, though.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I found the rehab for me was an opportunity to work on other things. So if you have a little shoulder niggle, I'm out with my knee and I've shoulder niggles, neck, you've a chance to strengthen neck, back, core, glutes, hammers. So you do have a chance to put other stuff together.
Imagine doing that fit, like you're fully fit, and off you go. And okay, so it's not that we'll never see you, you know, we'll give you a fitness program and all that kind of stuff to stay tuned, but like rest the body, rest the mind, and come back and give us.
Yeah, maybe it's something that could have worked with Sean, and maybe he needed a complete break away from even doing the kind of fitness and the rehab, that his body just gets a complete break.
Yeah. And isn't the rehab boring? Doesn't everybody hate it? Isn't it a bit grim? You're away from rugby activities. You're a bit of a pariah within the team in a weird way.
It's a ladder kind of scenario. If you feel you're kind of getting back and you're active, the early parts of the rehab when you're post-injury is frustrating, because you don't see a lot of progress, and it's when you start moving on the bike or running or making some gains or getting some scores in the stats, you're in a good place because you're progressing. But it's just unfortunate. But I think the legacy, I hope in a sense that he will get to play with London Irish. It'd be brilliant that he could get back and recover. Is it worth it? The money is probably very good. He'd probably get a good insurance payout. I just think it's sad that he hasn't got a chance to leave on a high, you know. You think of some of the players who got to leave on a high. 56 caps, Sean O'Brien probably should be a 100 cap man.
Definitely, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but the legacy and the impact he's made on Irish rugby and Leinster has been phenomenal.
Yeah, and at a cultural level as well. Here's Stuart Lancaster speaking to us after the game about Sean O'Brien's departure. He paid tribute, obviously, to the Tulla men, but also warned that the Leinster show will go on.
Well, it has to be up there, wouldn't it? I mean, in terms of what he's delivered in the game. You know, he reminds me a little bit of. I feel I never got the chance to really coach him. You know, he was at his best, obviously, with the Lions, and you know, obviously, my time with Leinster has been injured a lot of the time. And Jamie Heaslip was a similar type of player where you just love to have coached him, you know, more really. But throughout the time I've spent with him over the last 3 years, so impressed with his personality, his integrity, his leadership, his desire to want to improve, and he raises the standards of everyone around him. And you know, people talk about what's his point of difference. His point of difference is how he makes other people feel in the squad, and it's testament to his influence that he was given the trophy to raise, because I don't think anyone doubted his influence over Leinster in the last 10 or 15 years.
How much are you going to miss him and Jack McGrath next season?
Yeah, I'll miss them. I think we'll all miss them. We'll all miss them. You know, the two Lions, you know, two top-end Ireland players. You know, Jack's, you know, going to take the opportunity with Ulster, and you know, we will support him with that. You know, obviously until we play against him, and Shawnee to London Irish. But so we'll miss them. But you have got, you know, the likes of Ed Byrne, who came on today, coming through. Back row wise, Max Deegan came on. You've got Dan Levy, who'll come back from injury, you know, during the course of the season. Caelan Doris was outstanding for us. Scott Penny, Ireland 20s open side. I think he's a little Sean O'Brien, to be honest. He's going to be a great player. So you know, the show rolls on with Leinster, you know, and that's a great credit to the academy and to the quality of the players that come through the system here.
Yeah, so they're pretty confident that they've got stuff within Leinster to replace Sean O'Brien. From an Ireland perspective, what are we going to do?
Well, Josh van der Fleer is, you wrap him in cotton wool now and keep him fit.
Here was our pre-World Cup. This was our... you had Van der Fleer and Sean O'Brien, pre-Six Nations, side by side. Obviously, Shoney's gone from that. Dan Levy's gone from that.
Who's back up to Van der Fleer now? Who'd be your first choice back up at this point? Because Van der Fleer clearly has the jersey now.
Jordy Murphy is probably next in line, but he's played a lot at number 8 this year, and he's never let Ireland down when he's played 7, and he was probably starter a couple of years ago.
Rhys Ruddock?
Rhys Ruddock can play. I think you're getting into territory there where you're putting guys where they're not natural, and he could be very effective. He played against South Africa a couple of years ago and was brilliant there.
Australia.
You lose a game then. You lose a game then, and you go, well, our back were beaten, and we've no 7. You can go straight to that scenario and say, well, we've no natural 7. I think someone like Tommy O'Donnell, who's had a very bad injury profile as well. He's a brilliant footballer. He's quick. He's powerful, and he could challenge there.
Is he fit?
Come back in the mix. Well, he's back from his latest injury as well. Tommy's similar to Sean, is probably not as bad, but he's had an horrendous run probably in the last 2 years. When he's fit, healthy, and well, he's back fit. He was fit. He's fit for the last couple of weeks. Just didn't have enough of game time played to feature against Leinster in the semi-final. He could come back into the reckoning if he gets a good pre-season. If he's named in the squad, I think he's named in the squad today, 45, for a training camp for the World Cup kind of run. So I think it's that kind of pecking order, and Tommy's got an opportunity, and I think he's lost out on opportunities, and the likes of Levy and Van der Fleer came on board a few years ago when Tommy got injured. He's someone who could come back in the mix. Sean Reedy could play there, and then can you make a 7 out of Rhys Ruddock, Max Steeg and fellas like that, CJ Stander. It didn't work against Leinster, but I think there's certain types of games, of course you could play CJ there, you could play Peter O'Mahony there, but you want to try and have natural 7s if you can. You want to have 2 6s, maybe one of them maybe can play in the second, or 2 8s and 2 7s.
You see the way Van der Fleer came back from injury and played as well as he's ever played against Munster. So he hadn't played since the Six Nations, right? Was it Six Nations or was it
it was the French game. He pulled his hamstring. It was,
so we know he can do that. Do you literally wrap him up and say, okay, you're
look, they don't have any games. I think you'll
don't play a minute in any warm-ups. Don't play.
World Cup. Well, it's just dangerous if you do that, Jerry. You know what I mean?
We look at it.
I know.
He can do it.
I know. It's dangerous. They'll all get some game time in those World Cup warm-ups. But I think a lot of Van der Fleer now is back into number 1. I think I did a squad last September, and I was thinking,
is he going to make it?
Will he make the World Cup squad? Because a fit and healthy Sean O'Brien and Levy was in pole position. And like we spoke about the depth, didn't we, a while back, and how many of them were there. But it's just been kind of badly hit now. But I think, look, Van der Fleer, it's brilliant that he's back. You hope he can stay fit. You want to try and have natural 7s behind if you can. O'Donnell can play 6 and 8. Jordy Murphy can play 6 and 8 as well. So you have a bit of room for manoeuvre there and movement. But Jordy Murphy's probably next in line as the 7.
Just on the idea of, say, CJ Stander perhaps going out there, I know you'd say it's not ideal to put somebody in that position when they don't naturally fit there, but has the evidence of the last couple of weeks suggested that the Jack Conan and CJ Stander gap is closing with every passing week, and therefore it might actually be a nice compromise to get Conan in at 8 and then Stander in at 7?
Look, it's with Munster not hitting the kind of highs and Leinster being involved in 2 finals and stuff, it's you've more exposure. Jack Conan has played really well this season. I'm a fan of his. I think he's a brilliant player, and he's putting pressure on there, and I think that's a good thing. Stander has delivered continuously for Ireland, I think, up to probably the Six Nations, where they all kind of struggled since he made his debut a couple of years ago. He's a tireless worker. But he probably needs, for all of them, it's no harm that there's kind of season over now and that there's no tour and that they can really kind of have a good pre-season, a good build-up. But that gap is closing, and I think Jack Conan deserves to be talked about more now. I think he's got real consistency into his game since he's come back into the Leinster picture this year. and the Irish pitcher as well. So he's someone who can certainly challenge there.
How important are those scenes on Saturday evening from an Irish perspective, that the season has ended on a high note? Because it was like Saracens' game clearly wound up these Leinster players. The Six Nations was obviously a disaster. We needed this from a countrywide perspective.
Yeah, I think so. From a Munster point of view, it's your biggest rivals winning more trophies, and you've got to tip your hat to Leinster. It's 10 trophies in 12 years is phenomenal, and that's what we're talking about, Munster closing that gap and being in that position. But what they've done is psychologically they've probably given that whole group now, for Joe Schmidt and Andy Farrell moving into this pre-season phase, they've given them that kind of belief that, you know, they finish on a high. There's the vast majority of that squad will be in the Joe Schmidt's plans for the summer and for the World Cup. So psychologically, to win a trophy, given where Ireland were last year, Leinster were, it's very important that psychologically they've won a trophy, and they kind of won ugly as well, particularly in the second half at times, which shows a bit of steel and resilience. Is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I said it last week here that Leinster or Glasgow averaging 35, 40 points in their last 8 games, just blowing teams away. This is going to be different. Leinster have to make it different. They have to make it ugly, abrasive, aggressive, and intensity to it. That, to be fair, Glasgow could have been 14-5 up and probably should have been. Leinster, Ringrose gets lucky with the try, great block down from Luke McGrath. The whole momentum switched then. And they just ground it out in the second half, and they did a bit of a Munster on it in 2008. I don't know if you remember, on 71 minutes we started picking and going against Toulouse, and I was like, Jesus, what are we doing? And Tomas O'Leary had only played a couple of games. Tomas just kept saying, go on, keep going, lads, and we're like, it's too early to close out this game. And Leinster were doing it a bit on Saturday at the 71st minute, and it frustrates the life out of the opposition, and it did out at Glasgow, and they just managed the tempo of that last 10 minutes very well. I know they conceded a try late on with 4 or 5 minutes to go, but I thought it was really important that they psychologically, to have that feel-good factor. It's
mad how the Saracens game was brought up in the post-match comments again, and Sexton brought it up kind of independent of many questions, I think, as well in the pre-match. Like, I know I alluded to it in the previous question, but this defeat to Saracens has clearly had a huge impact on the psyche in a hugely positive way, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear this mentioned again and again. I just hope, again, from a national perspective, that the Wales game and the England game are at the top of their minds going into the World Cup, that they are able to channel that into a positive as well.
Yeah, and they've got to learn from that, I think. How do you manage the power of the Vunipolos and Cruz and Itoje and these guys, and the disappointment in Cardiff, maybe just being smothered out of it by Wales, and a very good Welsh side who defended incredibly well and just turned the ball over throughout the Six Nations, didn't play the most attractive brand of rugby, and Ireland struggled with that. So that's why this one on Saturday was exactly the way Leinster kind of managed that game and didn't panic and didn't kind of force. Like when Glasgow were 7-0 up, it was Leinster then turned the pressure straight on them, got the try. Then when they missed that opportunity of when Hastings should have given the pass to Johnson, it would have been another try, would have been 4. After that, they just managed the game very well. They didn't force it, they didn't play in their own half too much. And that's what they were guilty of a little bit against Saracens, overplaying a little bit. But you would hope that there's loads of templates to look back and say, well, look, do this and this differently. When we play the bigger sides and move them around a bit and just manage the territory better. And I think that's, hopefully they will learn from that. But
if I gave you £1 million charity bet right now and said you've got to pick quarter-final, semi-final, where are Ireland going to finish?
I'm going to say semi-final.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to say.
Hope alive.
We just hope that. I prefer if it's South Africa. I think if we're playing New Zealand in a quarter final, it's going to be different. I think we've a closer. It's a real 50-50 shot with South Africa. We tend to, you know, psychologically, even though we've beaten New Zealand in recent years, which is brilliant, I just think we'd have a better opportunity and prefer to face South Africa. But
all right,
we've got to beat Scotland in the first game. We got to beat Scotland, Ger.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Alan.